Hi everyone, I love me, Utano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Deerhoof record, La Isla Bonita. 20 years as a band! And I believe this is their 13th full-length album. If I'm wrong on that, I'm sure in the comments you'll correct me. Over the years that they have been a band, they've undergone numerous lineups, some sound changes, but it was in the 2000s that they kind of evolved into this style that they're working with currently, which has made them one of the most fun-loving, idiosyncratic rock and pop groups in the underground. Deerhoof is one of those groups that sounds unique as a whole because there are so many unique individual parts that go into the finished product. So Tomi's very light, high, childlike vocals, as well as her kind of esoteric and absurd lyrics. Greg's very aggressive, frantic, groovy, and danceable drum beats. And John and Ed's very sharp, angular, and sometimes very dissonant guitar leads. The band's also well known for using some pretty strange chord progressions on their tracks too, or odd time signatures. And even though Deerhoof has settled into a pretty familiar style at this point, they do make sure to throw in a few left hooks or surprises into every release. They are constantly creative, and in my opinion, rarely disappoint. If you're new to the band, I suggest you try anything from the album Apple O to Friend Opportunity, but as far as their more recent stuff goes, we have the album Offend Maggie, which was easily one of their most straightforward, distorted, and rough albums so far. Maybe even to a slight fault because so many of the songs on this record, in my opinion, sound very much the same because of the kind of harsh recording. Then we have Versus Evil, which by contrast was a very dynamic and lush record at times, with some of Deerhoof's most tender and beautiful songs yet, while delivering their usual collection of very uppity, poppy, catchy, very fun tracks as well. And on the record Breakup Song, their previous record, they experimented quite a bit on some tracks with some electronics, some samples, but on their latest here, La Isla Bonita, they seem to be getting back to basics. Not really fooling around with anything else other than the guitars, drums, and vocals that we know them for. Much like Offend Maggie, this record has kind of a rough sound to it. It's a little grimy. The sound of the music here really speaks to the cover art. You're looking at something kind of black and white, grayscale, but it's kind of distorted and warped too. It's like watching epic Saturday morning cartoons on an old television that is seriously on the fritz as you consume massive amounts of the most sugary cereals known to man. The drums on this record, they're loud, they're booming, they're harsh. The bass is very resonant. The guitars are very sharp and shrill and have kind of a very metallic tone to them. They are sunburnt. And Satomi's vocals are very loud, they're very close. In this loudness, in this straightforwardness, again, this record reminds me of Offend Maggie, but I think Deerhoof comes off a little more dynamic on this record, writing some softer tracks, some prettier tracks too, and simultaneously, Deerhoof, in my opinion, actually delivers some of their heaviest material as well on this record. This isn't the first time Deerhoof has worked with quirky extremes on a record of theirs, and they do it again here pretty well too. We have the song Big House Waltz, which has this huge, massive bass drone on it that's fit up against this killer drum beat, some awesome guitar melodies. Satomi brings forward these vocals at one point that sound like she's like a ringleader at a circus. There's a really strange guitar passage toward the back end of the track. Deerhoof, they might be writing something catchy, but they always find a way to throw a wrench in the works and do something weird. And the song Exit Only has one of the most aggressive, heavy, and hard-hitting drum beats and guitar riffs to ever land on a Deerhoof album ever. There's the song Mirror Monster, one of the more gentle tracks on the LP that features all these fluttering guitars. There's some very tender vocal melodies and harmonies on this thing. I love the way the chord progression of this track ascends and resolves. And there's the song Black Pitch, which has this very twinkly, pretty guitar intro that sounds a lot like something that would have been more marketable in the indie scene in the 2000s when Deerhoof was doing much weirder stuff. As much as I like the harsh moments on this record, it's nice to hear some pretty songs as well, especially since the more beautiful spots were what attracted me so much to Versus Evil. The one major downside to this track is the kind of abrupt ending. And the closer, Oh Bummer, is another track that is a little softer, a little more melodic, though this track is maybe the dreariest of any song on the record, with a vocal melody that's absolutely nightmarish and emotionally painful. And Deerhoof makes sure to balance tracks like this out with songs that are unbearably fun, like the song Doom, which is loaded with melodies that sound like I'm on a psychedelic island filled with squawking polka dot parrots and dancing coconuts. There are some pretty male-female vocals on this track as well, and this is one of the few tracks on the record that kind of follows in an unpredictable linear structure. There are a few tracks on this record that are kind of average for Deerhoof, like Paradise Girl's not an amazing or totally new song for them, but this track would be nice on a mix for a girl who is smart and plays bass guitar, because that's what the song is about. A girl who is smart and plays bass guitar. And I wish the song God 2 was longer. It's a really great instrumental that I wish just had more length to it. And I wish that for a few other tracks on here too. As creative and as fun as some of these songs are, I kind of feel like Deerhoof came in, brought some interesting ideas, brought a great recording, but sort of dipped out early on some of these tracks. To me, this is another entertaining album from Deerhoof. I wouldn't say there's anything incredibly ambitious about it in comparison with other Deerhoof releases, or that there's really anything that fantastic about the flow of this album either. For sure, there's a nice variety of songs here, but it still kind of just feels like a standard mixed bag of tracks whose only continuous thread is the band's style and the kind of boomy, shrill production. What ends up saving this record and makes it great to listen to is that we have a lot of good songs here. Very good, quirky, fun rock songs that are sweet and very enjoyable in their unorthodoxy. I'm feeling a strong 7 on this LP. Transition, if you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Deerhoof, Isla Bonita, forever.